Let's go right to the disc. The footage of Jane Hamilton speaking and reading starts out with her talking about and reading her novel, Laura Ryder's masterpiece, and let's go to that right now.
Everyone says, Jenna Ferroli, you must be writing about Jean Ferrata. But of course, JF, I mean Jim Fleming. No, I really didn't mean Jenna Ferroli either, Jean Ferrata either, but, you know, Jenna Ferroli, it just came to me, it just rolled off my tongue. How could I say no to Jenna Ferroli? Anyway, I'm going to read this scene where Laura Ryder, who has a garden, a perennial garden farm, finds herself on the Jenna Ferroli show to talk about gardens. And meanwhile, all this time, she's been thinking about her romance novel and watching this affair that Jenna Ferroli is having with her husband, and really manipulating it, which of course Jenna does not know anything about. So here is the Jenna Ferroli show. The jaunty Jenna Ferroli music, the signature loopy, playful clarinet sounded in Laura's headset. She squeezed her eyes shut. She hadn't known what to wear, how dressy it should be, and she'd chosen a flowered knee-length skirt, a poofy thing, roses splashed on the pale yellow seersucker, and a silk tank top of the same yellow. It was garden-themey, festive and yet serious, which was how she wanted to feel. If it was an outfit a schoolgirl would wear, well, that was part of the picture. The producer had told her that she was first, and next there'd be an author who had written a book about growing vegetables with prison inmates, and following that, a phone interview with a director who staged Shakespeare plays with convicted felons, and last, Jenna would discuss The Bard with another author, a man who'd written a biography of the playwright and an exegesis, Susie, the producer, had called it, of the plays in relation to the flora of the times. Always, in a Jenna Ferroli show, there was a flow and a circle. I have with me in the studio Laura Ryder, Jenna was saying, co-owner of Prairie Wind Farm in Hartley, Wisconsin, and it's one of the most enchanting places I've ever visited. Ms. Ryder designs gardens and has a showcase on the farm that will transport you to another era and another continent. Laura took a deep breath and smiled gratefully at Jenna. She sent out yet another prayer that she would be able to speak in whole sentences, that she'd be able to do justice to this experience. Your farm is a masterpiece, Jenna said, of design and execution. It is a place of great tranquility and peace for visitors, and yet it must afford you little time for peace and quiet. Laura nodded, and then realized that of course she needed to speak. It is a lot of work, absolutely, but my husband and I, we have some time for hobbies. We do. What I love, Jenna, is to write. I really do. I'm planning, in fact, to write a book. I'm already at work on a novel. Eek! She was telling her secret to Jenna. Pinch me. So it seems sort of fitting that I'm on this show today, which is about writing, about Shakespeare, a glovemaker's son, right? As well as gardening. What a mouthful. But she'd said it. She'd told Jenna who she was. Jenna's gaze narrowed now and focused, as if to a pinprick, was needless to say, intense. But when you factored on the voice like a flute, plus the smile, you could sort of relax. Maybe, Laura thought, Jenna's eyes looked so penetrating because it was there in her pupils that her thinking was expressed. Writing a book, Jenna said slowly, as if this were a concept that was unknown to her. How fascinating. It is amazing. Have you always been a reader, then? Were you one of those girls who are up a tree somewhere, nose in a book? No, not at all. I was so average back then. My family thought I was pretty hopeless. I liked animals and arts and crafts and dolls. And then, you know, she didn't mean to giggle, but a little high hee-hee escaped her. Boys! Not a reader, Jenna purred, and yet you want to write. I used to read, you know, for facts, but I started in with novels, with those kinds of books, reading them a few years ago, and I got very, very hooked. Jenna cocked her head and adjusted her mic so she could lean toward Laura. It was just how Laura used to imagine Jenna when she listened. It was actually true that you could hear Jenna's curiosity. So, you feel as if you can write a novel even though you haven't trained for it all your life. I'm sure you are aware that we live in a culture of the amateur, a culture where everyone thinks he is an artist. You blog and you're a poet. Didn't George Bernard Shaw say that hell is filled with amateur musicians? Most writers I've interviewed on this show report that they've read since their earliest years, and either they studied literature in college or they read seriously for decades before taking pen to paper. Many of them have spoken about how in the act of writing they are having conversations with authors long dead and with the books themselves. They are part of a specific history and continuum. And yet, you feel you can read up for a year or two and then sit down and write a book? Laura could tell by how close Jenna had come and her look of concern that she truly wanted to know what Laura thought. It was personal and intellectual at the same time. I do feel I can do it, she said. Anyone can if they believe hard enough, if they follow their bliss. That's the greatest thing about writing. It's not rocket science. It's not some in-joke with other writers or books. It's storytelling, something we all do, all of us, every day. I do believe we are all writers. Every glove maker's son can be a poet. Surely not every glove maker. Stranger things have happened, trust me. And because, Jenna, I've been working on a romance novel, I've been watching classics like Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley, movies like that, doing, catch-up. Classics, Jenna repeated, Keira Knightley. She seemed to be getting information from her producer, from her feed, because she looked at Susie, who was now standing at the window, and sternly shook her head. What, I wonder, do you like about Pride and Prejudice, the movie, that classic, as you call it? In this current Austen revival, it's assumed that we all understand she's great and why this is so. But what do you, who have just come to her, have to say about that greatness? Oh my gosh, the movie is so empowering and happy. You really get that the hero and the heroine have made each other better people, which I think is the point, right, of love? You probably next want to ask me if I've read a lot of romances, and the truth is I haven't. Jenna laughed her wonderful water-going over the falls laugh, all bubbly and rolling. Laura's heart swelled, and her own cheeks, she was sure, were glowing. It was with merriment that Jenna said, "That does seem like trying to play a concert without ever practicing, without having tried to blow through your instrument." And then more seriously, many of the most successful romance writers started out as devoted readers of the genre, didn't they? That makes sense. But for me, Jenna, the fact is I don't like the usual plot where the independent, strong woman meets the stud muffin who seems stupid or evil or stuck up, and after 300 pages where the characters don't know what is what, and after he rapes her and gets to play around, after she shows him his pure side, he carries her off into the sunset. That just doesn't feel right to me. But I'm not sure I like the plot either, where the hero is so strong he can let the woman rule, because that makes the heroine seem sort of like a brat. I want to write a book about all women, every woman. I want to find out what women want deep down, and I want to discover what the ideal man is for today's real woman. The ideal man. Today's real woman. Jenna shook her head again, a sharp back and forth at the window. That's very ambitious. How do you find out such a thing? How do you research, if you will, what every woman wants or who every woman is? How I look at it is a writer has to be a sleuth. It's detective work. I've been trying to study what, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, an ideal woman, a brilliant and amazing woman, actually wants in a man, what kind of hero she needs when she's already sort of perfect. Because, Jenna, today's women are super evolved. I don't need to tell you that. They run their own businesses, they raise children alone, they take charge of their own learning. If women need men, why do they? What kind of man can improve the new model? What kind of partner can take her to new heights? That's what my research is about. And if the artist has to snoop a little bit and create opportunities, if you have to listen very hard to the people around you and watch, that's all part of the process. Laura would remember how the room went still, how it was as if Jenna had been in a game of tag, as if she'd been made to freeze by an invisible hand. What had just happened? Laura could hardly remember sentence to sentence what was coming out of her mouth. She'd never experienced living in the moment as she was doing now. She almost said to Jenna, "Are you okay?" But she thought it might be better if she continued to talk.